Good morning, good afternoon, or good night, and welcome to Command Power, the show in which we discuss all things Magic the Gathering with a focus on Commander. And today we have a brand new deck tech for you, but before that, just a quick reminder to please click like and subscribe if you enjoy my videos. We're well on our way to 1 million subscribers and every single click counts. And today's deck tech is going to be centered around Ertha Jo, Frontier Mentor. For 2 colors, 1 red and 1 white, it's a legendary creature, Core Advisor 2/4 with when Ertha Jo, Frontier Mentor enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 red mercenary creature token with tap. Target creature you control gets +1/+0 until end of turn. Activate only as a sorcery. And whenever you activate an ability that targets a creature or player, copy that ability. You may choose new targets for the copy. So first off, let me apologize for not making a video in the last few days. As you can probably hear from my voice, I'm recovering from having no voice at all. It's just one of the perks of being a first grade teacher, I guess. But anyway, here we are again, and I've really wanted to make a deck tech about this commander for quite a while. I think commanders that double abilities or triggers are all very powerful, and this one does something that we've really never seen before, and on an uncommon no less. So this is actually a very powerful effect. Being able to double any ability you activate that targets a creature or player actually is a very wide open ability, and there's a bunch of different ways that you can build this deck. So one of the ideas I had that I'm going to be maybe working on in a future video is a Planeswalker deck, because you have a lot of Planeswalkers that target with their abilities, and with Ertha Jo out, you're going to double up on all of those abilities. That seems really sweet. It's not actually what we're going to be focusing on here though. We're going to be going for a more regular build based around creatures and just basically any card that gives us some nice value. So without further ado, let's get started, and we're starting off with Adaka Valkyrie. This is a really good board wipe and removal protection creature, and it's going to work very well in this deck by basically protecting 2 of our creatures rather than just 1. Agros cost Eternal Soldier works very nicely with what the deck is trying to do. We have a lot of abilities that want to target our own creatures, so being able to pay just 2 mana and have them target all of our creatures seems great. Angelic Sellsword is a really sweet new card from the Outlaws of Thunder Junction Commander set, and it's going to draw us a bunch of cards in this deck because with our commander out, all we need to do is tap one of our mercenaries and we've basically achieved the condition. Bounty Agent is a decent card by itself, but it becomes very good with Ertha Jo out because we get to deal with 2 things with its activated ability. Brash Tornado is a card that I've always liked, and it works so well in this deck. Being able to double up on its activated ability just means that you're going to be dishing out a bunch of damage. Brian Stout Armor can be a really strong finisher. It works out particularly well with this deck because we're making a bunch of mercenary tokens that are going to pump our creatures' power. Captivating Crew is another really good value card slash finisher that becomes so much better when you're stealing 2 creatures for 4 mana instead of just 1. Cathar Commando is another really solid card that's going to allow us to destroy 2 artifacts or enchantments with its activated ability. Chandra Fire of Kaladesh is really solid with our commander. All we need is a single red spell and we basically get a transformer, and the other side also has a bunch of abilities that target, so it's very good. Drumbellower is going to allow us to use our creatures during each of our opponent's turns. That's very good when our entire deck is basically activated abilities. Fury Stoke Giant is a really fun finisher from back in Shadowmoor, where it's basically going to give all of our creatures the ability to deal 2 damage to anything. When you factor our commander in and the fact that we can double up those abilities, that seems very strong. Giant Killer is a really solid card in this deck. It's decent removal, which it always is, and then it can just sit in play and tap down 2 things every single turn, which is very strong. Giver of Runes is excellent as a way to protect our commander or any of our key creatures. Hellspur Posse Boss seems very solid. It's going to give all of our outlaws haste, and we're running a few of those in the deck, but then it also comes with 2 mercenaries on its own, which are obviously great with our commander. Humble Defector seemed hilarious, and it's one of the main reasons I was pushed to make this deck. It just seems really funny to draw 4 cards with this, and then hopefully you get it passed back at some point. Intrepid Hero is a nice bit of removal. If your opponents have big creatures, you can just take 2 of them out at a time. Jaxis the Troublemaker is really good with our commander out because for just 1 card and 1 red mana, we get 2 copies of a creature that are both going to draw us a card when they die. It's really solid. Diaballard is a card that's usually not quite good enough because of the card disadvantage, but when you're doubling up all of her abilities, she just becomes so much better. Lauren of the Third Path is going to allow you to draw 2 cards, and since you can split up the opponents who draw those cards, it's not as bad as just letting 1 opponent draw 2. Mother of Runes is basically another version of Giver of Runes. It's a little bit different, but they're very similar. Scrub Defectormite is yet another version of the Mother of Runes effect. It's really nice to have a bit of redundancy in this slot because it means we can protect our creatures very well. Soulbright Flamekin becomes really good in this deck because all we need to do is sink 4 mana into it and we're going to get 8 mana in return. That means we're getting a really nice ritual and giving 4 creatures trample, which is really good. Spikeshot Elder is one of the best ways we have to finish the game. With all of our mercenary tokens, we can target it, thus giving it a really high power, and then we can start dumping mana into it to deal a bunch of damage to any target. Spikeshot Goblin is pretty similar to Spikeshot Elder, except it has to tap, which means means we can only use it once per turn. Real World Warrior is really cool. You basically get to grow it with the training ability, which is easy to do thanks to our mercenaries, and then we can double up his Hadouken ability by dealing a bunch of damage to 2 targets and hopefully drawing 2 cards. Voldaren Thrillseeker is another card that can finish off the game very easily if we put a couple of counters on something fairly big and then sacrifice it to double that damage dealing ability. Yes Man Personal Securitron is not only super cute, but it's also really good in this deck. We're immediately gonna draw 4 cards and put 2 quest counters on it, and that means that when it eventually dies, we're gonna get a bunch of tokens out of it. It's probably fair to say we're not gonna get it back, but still it's gonna keep growing and we're going to get a bunch of tokens when it actually dies. Zerda the Dawnwaker is really good because it's gonna reduce all the activated ability costs in our deck by 2, which is something really good, and then obviously being able to make 2 things not block is a nice little bonus. Moving on to artifacts, we have Bounty Board. This is very nice because we can double up the bounty counters we put on creatures, and they're all going to give us 2 life and a card whenever they die, so that's a nice ability to have on a mana rock. Chaos Wand is one of my favorites in this deck. Doubling up on this ability just seems really sweet. I love the randomness it provides, and being able to get 2 spells of 4 mana is quite good. Mistress Bauble is a really good bread and butter kind of effect in this deck. Being able to look at the top of your opponent's library does give you a little bit of information, but it's mostly there so we can draw 2 cards for 0 mana. Realmbreaker, the Invasion Tree, is a card that is almost good enough normally, but when we have our commander out, it just becomes amazing because you're probably going to double Rampant Growth for 2 mana, which is a great rate. Stone of Eric is another one that becomes so much better when we have our commander in play. We can just leave it in play as long as we need, to be fair, because it has a really good passive ability on it, but then when we eventually cash it in, we're going to draw 2 cards and exile 2 players' graveyards. 1000 Year Elixir is quite an important card in the deck because it's going to allow all your activated ability creatures to tap immediately, which is obviously very nice, and also giving us an untap on a creature is something that we definitely want to have. Finally, Unstable Obelisk is a card that has a very expensive activated ability that you wouldn't normally want to use because 7 mana is a lot to deal with 1 permanent, but when you're dealing with 2 permanents instead, it suddenly becomes a lot better. Fable of the Mirror Breaker is a nice card that's always good to have in a deck, but obviously transforming it into Reflection of Kiki-Jiki just makes it very good in this particular deck. Goblin Bombardment can be a good way to deal the last few points of damage to our opponent, and it's still going to double up the damage thanks to our commander. Seal of Cleansing also works very well by dealing with 2 artifacts or enchantments. This is very, very solid with our commander. Moving on to lands, I wanted to highlight a Ganjo, Seat of the Empire, because this is of course an activated ability, even though it might not initially seem so. So basically we're going to get to double up on this kind of effect, which seems very, very good. The same applies to Labyrinth of Scophos. This is going to allow us to remove 2 attacking or blocking creatures from combat, which is a very nice ability to have on our land. Maze of Ith also becomes very strong, and it should be very difficult to attack us when our commander is out. Ominous Cemetery is a card from the Doctor Who set that I really like, and here it just gives us some additional removal from our land slots, which is always great. Rogue's Passage can give 2 creatures unblockable for the price of 1 here. It's a good way to finish off the game if we have something big, and War Room is just a way for us to draw some extra cards, which is always welcome in a Boros deck. So there you have it. This has been my Ertha Jo Frontier Mentor deck tech. What do you think about this one? Are you as excited about the different ways you can build this commander as I am? I feel like this is one of the coolest uncommons we've seen in a while, and there's just so many different avenues to explore that I feel that I'm just scratching the surface with this one, and I'm probably going to try to build a bunch of different decks with him. But what do you think? Are there any cards you think I missed? Any things you think I shouldn't have included? Let me know in the comment section below. I always make sure to read all of your comments. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to click like or subscribe. It really helps the channel. And until next time, take care.